I want to speak to this one. Now this comment was put on a different video associated with a totally different case in which a guy and his common law wife had been together for more than a decade, and he decided, okay, I'm going to go down to check out the river, and she said she wanted to go up to get pictures from higher up. So there's a couple connections here that are interesting in Kenny Veach, and it also ties in with temperature. At any rate, after about a year, they started accusing him. Now, not this guy, but the guy in the video. But it's a totally different video, and if I put the link, it wouldn't serve any purpose. But this guy posted this comment. And so I want to point out a couple things. It's not like people don't know it. I know they do. I know they do. It's not like people don't realize if you fall and break your leg that you could be killed by cold because you broke your leg. I realize that. But anyway, let me read it. Actually, I had to redo this because the video was out of focus. The camera did not focus on the screen, so I had to redo it from scratch. Here's what the guy says. The first thing is, okay, a couple years goes by and they start to accuse him, not this guy, but the husband of the girl. They start to look at him, and he was deeply hurt. He had been going up searching for months with dogs, the whole works. Well, anyway, a couple years goes by and she does turn up in the river. She does turn up in the river with her ring still on that he gave her. Okay? And the main point is on that one is if nobody is found, they're going to start accusing friends and relatives. Okay, now often it can be the friends or relatives. So that does have to be looked at. Okay, but they found the remains, and he was exonerated and was deeply hurt by the fact that they suspected him. And so that's a connection with Kenny Veach. The same thing happened with Kenny Veach. But the other thing is the connection with temperature. With temperature at the time of the year, as it pertains to an injury. Now let me read this. I'm going to read this because even now I don't know if it's going to be in focus. But this guy commented, it can happen. I hiked an old goat trail on the ranch yesterday. Ranch has 22,000 acres and a low population, maybe 12 people in the entire 22,000 acres. I've made this hike literally hundreds of times in my 50 plus years. So I put his age at, 53. Complacency can be your enemy. Long story short, I'm glad when I slipped and hurt my leg, I wasn't too far from home. It took me well over 2 hours to get 3/4 of a mile to his home. I barely made it. Watching this really made me think. He says, what if I was in the middle of Yosemite Park by myself? Well, I'll tell you, he wouldn't have been found. And then he says, I got bumps and bruises. Now remember, this is no broken ankle, no broken leg, no sprained ankle. He says, I got bumps and bruises. There's a bump on my shin the size of a goose egg. He's writing this right after it happened. And he says, I'm just glad I'm alive. I went off trail, as Kenny, everyone does, because I saw some old animal bones. I'm on a Texas cattle ranch, so I had to check. Because he has to document if each cow that gets killed by the wolves, whatever. And he says, next thing I know, I'm on my back looking at the sky, right out of the middle of nowhere. It can happen when you least expect it. That he was lucky. So that's 3/4 of a mile. Now, my old story that people are tired of hearing is that I was coming down from Frenchman Mountain in the dark, coming down the road, which is steep. It's a steep road, and I was being careful. I was hunched forward. I was being as careful as I could, and wham, I'm telling you, in a split second, I hit so hard I bashed my head, my light flew off. I thought I had been paralyzed. I even commented to, after I recovered, it took me a minute of moaning and groaning to report to Facebook, friends on Facebook, that I may have to be rescued. I think I've broken my back. I mean, no, I'm telling you, you do not have to fall off of a 10-story cliff. No, you can fall down standing up and get injuries where you're not killed instantly, but you may not make it down. Okay, so let's go to Google Earth. I know nobody has seen this picture before. Now remember, this guy said 3/4 of a mile, and it took him over 2 hours, and he barely made it back. Okay, so now let's go to Google Earth. Here's Kenny Veach up there. I know you all like this new map here you've never seen before. 3/4 of a mile. Suppose he was up here or over here. I don't care about that right now. But suppose he's up here, gets cold, tries to work his way down, or even if he doesn't get cold, and he does the slightest fall. You can do a fall from a standing position and bash your brains open on the limestone rock, let alone if you fall, let's say, 3 feet. 3 feet. Or sprain an ankle. Hikers say, I had to cut my own arm off to get out of there. It happens all the time. So now this 3/4 of a mile, that guy barely made it back. Okay, let's use this as a target. Okay, it could be here, it could be there, I don't know. But let's use that as a target. 3/4 of a mile would be right here. Okay, and yet he gets the slightest injury, and has to make it 4 miles. 4 miles back down. Now, it's dark. A cell phone was found here. He was probably doing pine nuts. It's dark. It's getting cold. And so he's got, now that guy had a bump on his shin. Suppose Kenny Veach sprained his goddamn ankle, or broke his leg, or fell, hit his head, broke his arm, ribs, or whatever. He ain't going to make it far. No. He's not going to make it 4 miles down here. And so then the temperature becomes important, especially in an injured condition. In an injured condition that he's laying here injured, okay, he can get around and groan, maybe get into his backpack or something like that, but it could be something where he's not going nowhere, let alone to come down and work down across cliffs. Remember that he had to be rescued from on top here. Now, I don't know if it was this one, but I assume it was. He went up to his furthest extent, had to be rescued by a helicopter because he was out of water and blew out his knee. And he had to be rescued by a helicopter. Well, that shows a pattern. And so the point is, as far as the colder temperatures, it doesn't mean that, okay, he gets up here, makes camp and freezes to death. No. It means that if the slightest thing happens, a sprained ankle or whatever, that he wouldn't be able to work his way down, he wouldn't be able to get out of there. And he then could die of the hypothermia itself. So that's my point. That's my point.